Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is from the Political Research Associates website, politicalresearch.org. Why are Gen Z girls attracted to the trad wife lifestyle? At first glance, Sarah, not her real name, is your average social media savvy Generation Z girl. Her Instagram account is typical of a, quote, Zoomer feminine aesthetic, inspired by the alternative, colorful style of the late 1990s, early 2000s, counterculture fashion. Her page is full of sparkles, Hello Kitties, black painted nails, and a photo of her Nike Airs. What you wouldn't be able to discern at first glance is Sarah's far-right political leanings. And I'm not going to cover all of this. I'm going to mostly paraphrase. But there is this trend going around called the trad wife or traditional wife movement. So it's nothing new. But here's the problem. In trying to go back to a, quote, simpler past, there's a lot of darkness in this movement and a lot of problems that could potentially crop up amongst its followers, particularly the younger followers who are being influenced by well-to-do, maybe well-meaning influencers on YouTube, TikTok, etc. Supported by a follower count of over 17,000, her TikTok account provides her a substantial platform to spread her gospel of right-wing anti-feminist and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. Mixed in with her lip-syncing videos about boys and her favorite bands, she comments frequently on the degeneracy of feminism, repeats racist stereotypes, trigger warning, racism, violence, other things may come up in this video. I am not a racist, but I have no problem calling out things that I feel are discriminatory. About black men, jokes about killing liberals, and shames white people who criticize their own race. Sarah isn't alone. She's part of a growing group of teenage girls and young women who fully embrace the misogynistic talking points of the far right. On any given day, you'll find them on TikTok preaching a hip-to-be-square lifestyle, modest, often zealously religious, which is nothing wrong with that. But you can have your religion, but when you get to the point of shoving it in everybody's faces and doing physical harm to those who disagree, then we have an issue. And purposefully restricted in their videos and their Twitter accounts between posting fashion inspiration and memes, they fantasize explicitly about the mythical post-war Americana of the mid-20th century, in which they envision as full of Aryan nuclear families and blonde Tupperware-toting women who are submissive to their husbands. The online trend Sarah is part of is known as trad wifery. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with being a wife. However, this movement is different. And accepting that women shouldn't work, shouldn't have the right to vote, and should fully submit to their husbands and their faith to live a long, happy life of homemaking. Here's the problem, and I'm going to go back to show you another source. These people go on YouTube and spout their ideology, which you have the right to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's the deal. Influencing people to just only be wives and that will bring them bliss and happiness is wrong. Here's the thing. these influencers, Mrs. Midwest, Classically Abby, they are leading their followers down a wrong path. Not everybody has the perfect marriage. Things happen in marriage. Marriage won't always be perfect. And I'm going again to go to a very active influencer, Classically Abby. And you can see the cracks in their argument, but yet they're influencing and steering young people into dangerous territory, and I'm going to show you why. Here's Classically Abby's video. Why?
Let's talk about BetterHelp. If you ever feel anxious,
why
depressed,
marriage is
stressed,
awesome.
overwhelmed by the world being... Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about 5 reasons marriage is awesome.
Again, she's making a broad statement saying that marriage is awesome. For too many, as we know, that is not the case. And teaching impressionable younger generations that things are always going to be peaches and cream in marriage is wrong. Teaching them to depend on a man is wrong. Things in life happen.
So I've been married for 2 years now, and I absolutely love being married. But when I got married, some people would have said I was a little bit young. I got married at 24. Now, when I was growing up in a more Orthodox religious community, that age was actually just about right and really accepted. It wasn't considered young. But at the time that I got married, I wasn't living in the Orthodox Jewish community. I was living at Manhattan School of Music, and I was in my grad program. And a lot of the people around me thought that 24 was super young to get married. And a lot of them also thought that marriage was kind of silly. I knew a lot of my friends who said that they never even wanted to get married, that they thought that the whole premise was silly, and that it really wasn't even worth their time. So I wanted to talk about today why marriage is amazing and why I'm so glad that I did get married at 24, that I am married now, and how much I love being married. Now, if you are hoping to get married but you aren't yet, I don't want this video to make you feel bad that you aren't married yet, because there are great things about being single, but I do think that marriage is a really worthy goal and a really great place to aim. So I don't want this to make you feel bad if you are looking. Always someone there to be with, that you don't have to be alone if you don't want to. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you don't ever get alone time, because if you have a good partner and you're in a good relationship, you guys make time to just spend time alone. But it means that when you don't want to be alone, there's somebody there to hang out with, and it's the greatest thing. One of the nicest things about being married is that you're with someone who wants to hang out with you, and they want to be there.
Yes, in a perfect scenario, this is true. However, we've seen time and time again that person you married can turn out to be your worst enemy. People change, marriages change, and this try-to-wife movement teaching them to forego education, forego jobs of their own, are just, when things do happen in the marriage and you no longer have that security, what are you going to do? Try-to-wifery does not prepare, in my opinion, women for the actual world they will have to be working and living in, whether sooner or later.
Wherever you go, whatever you do. Now, of course, you're going to have different interests, you're going to have different things you want to do, but most of the time, you'll just have someone there to be with, and it's so nice. I remember when I was single in New York, I actually enjoyed being single, but a lot of the time, I would just kind of do date days by myself, and I would go out to lunch, I would see a movie, and I would go to a museum, and I would do all those things by myself, and I loved that I was able to, and I had a great time, but now I have someone to do those things with, and it's so nice to kind of have that comparison. where I had that time by myself and I got to enjoy my own schedule, but now I get to share that schedule with somebody who loves me and who I love, and it's a wonderful thing. So having that built-in partnership, having that person who's always there to hang out with you is so great. I feel like COVID-19 has made this so much clearer because it's really hard to be lonely, and when you're married, you don't have that same fear of loneliness because there is somebody there, and you don't have to worry as much that you're going to be alone. It's nice to have somebody there, and it's just a wonderful part of being married. The second thing is you have a 24/7 support system. It's an amazing feeling to know that there's always...
Again, individual situations. Your partner is not always going to be supportive. It's just human nature.
Going to be someone on the other end of the phone who you can reach out to if you need to. You know that if you're ever in trouble, there's somebody there. There's somebody who's watching out for you, and they're just always going to be there to help.
Again, in a perfect, ideal marriage, they would be watching out for you. However, men and women both in marriage have done things that are the opposite of watching out for you, the opposite of in your best interest. And when that happens, you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet for whatever happens. Whether it's just the natural progression of life. Men tend to live less long than women. And when you're without your husband, you need to have your own life, your own skills, stand on your own 2 feet in order to survive and help your kids survive if you need to.
You through those hard times. Life is hard and life is long, and having somebody there and a partner to really help you through those hard times and that you can help too is so important and incredible that you have somebody to depend on.
Depend on. Very, very risky. When you're depending on somebody else completely for your livelihood, not only does it put more pressure on them, what if they find somebody else? What if they decide they don't want to be married anymore? You've depended on them for so much. How are you going to make ends meet, take care of any kids you might have? By establishing yourself before marriage and continuing to have your kind of own life going outside of marriage, you'll be fine if whatever happens.
And it's not just the bad stuff, it's also the great stuff. It's the successes. When you're married, your successes are your partner's successes, and your partner's successes are your successes. It's an incredible thing to know that when you do well, they're also doing well. So your partner is always going to want you to succeed, and it's an incredible feeling to know that you have somebody cheerleading for you on the sidelines. And sometimes they're not even on the sidelines. Maybe they're actually your teammate because they are working with you to help you get better at those things. It's so nice to know that there's always someone there rooting for you. And your husband is always going to be there to help you. Now think about those...
Not always. Again, people change. Marriages change. Think of how many divorces we have. Think of how many affairs go on. Abby is talking as if these things will always be there, and we know from fact they may not be.
Times in your life where you've really had a hard time and you haven't had someone there to help. It's kind of scary. It's really hard. Again, I lived in New York for 3 years by myself, and there were times where I was ill and there was nobody there to help me, and it's really scary and hard. And now I have somebody there who's always going to help, who always wants to help, and who's going to go out of his way to help. And I just feel so happy that I'm married because I know that I'm always going to have that support system in place. Number 3 is that you can actually start planning your future. And what I mean by that is when you're single, you can sort of make plans, but the problem is that you don't know exactly what things are going to look like because you don't have somebody else there whose plans you're going to need to take into account too. When you are living alone, all of those things are yourself. You're independent. You have to just do what you need to do while you're single. And you can kind of make a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come into play because, again, you don't have that person who is going to change those things, who is going to help you decide when you're going to have kids, and who's going to help you know if you're going to work full time and all of those things. But when you get married, you can really start to make those plans because even though things aren't going...
I'm going to stop here. And if you don't believe anti-feminism is a thing, check out Yogi Obes. Okay.
Make your voice heard with DeVry's Next Gen Hispanic Scholars Program and build tech-focused skills as part of a supportive community. Advance your ambition. Visit devry.edu.
Are you a creator looking for new ways to make money?
Always.
Then you need to check out Shopify.
Guys,
This is Yogi Obes, who is a known misogynist. Take a look.
अब मॉर्टिन का पोजीशन चेंज होने वाला है क्योंकि रूम में वाईफाई आ गया। ओवर एक्टिंग क्यों कर रहा हूँ मैं? रूम में वाईफाई आ गया क्योंकि बाहर से बिल्कुल भी नेटवर्क नहीं पकड़ता है। इतना फनी है। ओह, jokes. Should I become a Bollywood actor now that I'm famous in?
Okay, that is not Yogi Obes. My mistake. Let me find it.
And you should not be okay
There he is.
with a woman being disloyal. And it's not even, she doesn't even have to sleep with someone. Just looking at someone or following someone on Instagram or receiving messages on Instagram and flirting with other guys. That's an act of disloyalty, disobedience, not being submissive as well. So the last thing we need to normalize for women is for them to keep their stupid opinions to themselves and just let men lead.
And people wonder why I'm a feminist. It's because of sexist pieces of trash like this. This guy doesn't even think women should be allowed to express their opinions, that a woman's opinion is somehow not as valuable as a man's opinion. He also says that women shouldn't even look at other men when they are in a relationship. He might be a Sharia law apologist. And why should women be submissive to men? Just because the Bible says so? Just because the Quran says so? Just because fake religions say so? Why should men have the final say on everything? In reality, men are obviously flawed human beings who are sometimes wrong, just like women. All these patriarchal ideas.
Exactly. Yogi Obes and those like him basically want women to go back into the 50s and shut up. There are men like this out there. Anti-feminism is a real thing.
Are nonsense. And to the sexism. That's why women became feminists in the first place. You have all these MGTOWs and incels on the internet who trash women all the time. You have this Jesse Lee Peterson guy and his butt buddies saying that women not only shouldn't be allowed to vote, but women shouldn't be allowed to get educated either. And this is actually a common opinion among the alt-right, that women shouldn't have the right to vote, that women shouldn't have basic rights. When have women ever advocated for taking away men's right to vote or right to...
The MGTOW.
Okay, so we got a little scrambled. I'm sorry. Now let's take a look at another feminine tradwife influencer, Mrs. Midwest, and Jacqueline Glenn will help me explain everything about her.
Zero in on RV savings. Funtown RV is offering unbeatable RV deals for a limited time. Beat the clock.
Adopt it. And because I'm smiling and very happy to talk to you, you're going to ignore all the hypocrisies and terrible things that I say. So I made a video a couple of days ago on a YouTube channel called Mrs. Midwest. Off the bat, this girl doesn't look like she says anything bad. She's very smiley. She says positive things in her videos, and like Girl Defined, most people walk by unassuming of anything wrong because she's a pretty girl with a smile on her face. What could go wrong? I highly recommend you watch my last video to understand this one because it is in many ways a follow-up to what I said before. All of the things that I said before, I completely stand by, but I do feel the need to elaborate upon them. First of all, it was a very long video. If you did not make it to the end, I did come to the conclusion that she is nowhere near as bad as Girl Defined, but I still do have an issue with a lot of the things that she says. Her portrayal of femininity and masculinity can be actually pretty harmful to people out there who are still trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do with their life. My biggest problem with Mrs. Midwest is the misinformation that she propagates on her channel. Now this comes in two forms. blatant misinformation where she gives a statistical analysis of things that are actually completely wrong and in subtle hypocrisies that are right in front of your face but nobody sees because she moves past them so quickly. What do you mean by that? In the videos that I reacted to in my last upload, she spent a lot of time in those videos talking about why young women should not go to college. And the actual quote, if I remember correctly, is that you should plan your life around your family and not your family around your life. And this is a video that was aimed at young women trying to decide whether or not they want to pursue a career or become a housewife. By necessary when she detrimental things she said. She had her channel. Now this comes in two forms. Blatant misinformation where she gives a statistical analysis of things that are actually completely wrong and in subtle hypocrisies that are right in front of your face but nobody sees because she moves past them so quickly. What do you mean by that? In the videos that I reacted to in my last upload, she spent a lot of time in those videos talking about why young women should not go to college. And the actual quote, if I remember correctly, is that you should plan your life around your family and not your family around your life. And this is a video that was aimed at young women trying to decide whether or not they want to pursue a career or become a housewife.
By planning your life around family instead of family around your life.
So she's asking young women to change their course of action for the future, for the potential family that they don't even have yet. It's all hypothetical. This quote bothered me more than anything in that video that I posted. More than anything. Because I did see people in her comment section directly quoting that line as though it were the most brilliant thing they had ever heard. And I think it's the most detrimental.
Okay, the problem with planning a family around your life. Okay, if you don't have a life first, a career, a way to take care of said family, how are you going to help your family in the future? How are you going to support a family? So you have the family, so when things happen, how are you going to support a family? You need to think of that before you think of having kids or being married. But Mrs. Midwest, it's kind of the opposite.
Detrimental thing she said. She heavily encourages women to get married young and to have babies young, misquotes statistics on marriage, and then proceeds to act like she's completely virtuous in doing all of this. And everybody in her comment section agrees. There were people on my video that said she's so nice. Why would you make a video on her? Well, I'm sorry. I don't care how kind a person is. I don't care how nice they say terrible things. If they say things that I think could negatively impact the next generation of people, I'm sorry, I'm going to say something about it. She spent a lot of time talking about college and discouraging people from going to college, although she does briefly mention if you choose to do that, it's fine, but there is a lot of negative talk surrounding college, and it is very discouraging when she herself has gone to college and admittedly.
And classically, Abby, you'll see the same thing. She's now saying that women should put family over career, despite the fact that she spent, thousands of dollars pursuing an opera career. Yet she wants everybody else to just be stay-at-home moms and have babies.
Is currently benefiting from doing so.
I went myself and had a wonderful education that is benefiting me during this blogging and YouTube journey.
I don't know about you, but if someone is going to give advice on how to be successful without going to college, maybe that person shouldn't have gone to college. It's just really difficult to listen to her harp on how it's expensive and potentially unnecessary when she went and is using it to be successful. And it blows my mind that so many people decided to point out the fact that she went to college to me as some kind of defense on her part. All I see that is just a giant red flag of hypocrisy that's very difficult to ignore. She makes videos on being a homemaker, on not pursuing a career and staying at home and not having a job. Yet
Yes, that is another hypocrisy. You are making money on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel, you're obviously working, yet you slam working moms. A lot of conservative influencers. Classically, Abby, she'll spend thousands on an opera degree, and now she's telling everybody, until you have babies, your life really is pointless. Okay, so that degree you spent thousands of dollars getting was worthless? And let me remind you that Abby's mom is the one that was the breadwinner in her family, yet she has decided, since she's had her son, that women working, really isn't the best idea. You should be at home.
She has built herself a YouTube channel that is growing in popularity, and if I have any place to comment here, and I feel like I do, it can be a full-time plus job. Between making videos, editing videos, working with companies that hopefully sponsor you. I just finished a tour. It's about to be a world tour. I live stream all of the time. I have Patreon that I try to run and keep up with, and there are so many things at once that it becomes very hard to manage your time and still have a social life when you are working as often and as long as you do. So then my question becomes, what place does she have to have all of this going on and run a blog and do all of these things, yet talk about how she's a homemaker and just stays at home and doesn't have a career, which clearly she does? How does nobody see the hypocrisy in what she's saying? She's giving words of encouragement to other people that she herself doesn't follow. Imagine if I went to church. Imagine if I were a Christian and I'm like, yeah, I'm religious and I go to church, but here's why you should be an atheist. Like, why would you listen to somebody like that? If their advice is so good, then they themselves would take it. And if they're not, that says something. But anyway, back on the blatant misinformation that she gives people. I'm gonna start with college. She acts as though it is something that is just insurmountable debt. You can't, it takes your whole life, potentially, to pay it off, or at least 15 years, which, personal experience, that's not true.
Remember that
I went on financial aid and did not have any student loans. Just putting that out there.
if you take on that debt in college, that you need to work your career to pay it off for the rest of your life, potentially, or at least for the next 15 years.
At least for the next 15 years. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people that truly did struggle with debt from college, and I do not want to hide from that. Yes, it can be very expensive, but it doesn't have to be. You can get scholarships. You can do a lot of different things. You can work a job in college. I did all of those things. I spent my entire summer applying for scholarships, and I got a lot of them. I worked in college. There were so many things that I did, to the point where whenever I graduated, I didn't have a pile of student debt, and I paid it off extremely quickly. To me, scaring people with misinformation about how bad it can be without presenting the alternative of how it doesn't have to be that bad is going out of your way to discourage people from doing something that can be very, very good for them. Clearly it was good for her. It's paying off. She is using the skills she learned in college to form a successful YouTube channel, and good for her. I did the same thing. My degree was biomedical sciences, not entirely related to what I'm doing here, but partially.
Be very mindful as an 18-year-old taking on debt. When you're a homemaker, it's going to be about being frugal.
So this video in particular of hers was directed towards people who want to be homemakers. So I guess that's a very, select, very specific group of people that already have this in mind, but she just said 18-year-olds. So she is aiming this video at young women, 18 years old, that are potentially considering going to college. They're not married, they don't have kids, but don't forget, you guys, plan your life around your hypothetical family and not your family around your life.
Your life around family instead of family around your life.
A lot of people in my comments were mad at me because they're like, she's making this video for women who are stay-at-home moms. And I'm like, no. Really, that's not true. This is aimed very specifically at young women who have not made a choice on which direction to go, and she is encouraging them to go this way, and I have a problem with that, and I'm making a response video. That's life. When you put your opinion on the internet, you open yourself to criticism. And I know it might not be super feminine of me according to her, but I'm not going to hold back my opinion for fear of hurting people's feelings in matters of things that I do think are very important and potentially life-changing for people.
A lot of people have expressed fear at becoming a homemaker in the event that your husband would either pass away or leave you cheat on you, divorce you, etc., you would still be given half the income according to the courts.
Now, I already reacted to this bit in my last video. Again, recommend that you check it out. But I want to point out that that's
Not all men pay child support. There are men who have found ways around it. Believe it or not. I personally have seen it. And half of what? If your husband makes a high income, then half of it would be great. But if your husband does not, half of it wouldn't be so great. It would help, but still.
That's not how the courts work. When you go through a divorce and you get something called alimony, it's not 50% of everything. That is misinformation, that is bad advice. Also, what a terrible way to live. Like, don't get a job, don't do anything for yourself. I know you're 18, but get a husband, have him pay for everything, and then if something happens to him and he cheats on you, you get half of his things. No worries, no need for a backup plan. To me, this is just the worst life advice, and it scares me that there could be young people out there watching her videos being like, yeah, that's what I'll do. I get half of everything. I'm entitled to it. Honey, that's not how life works. That is not how it works. And she also talks, after that part, she goes into life insurance. So if he dies, make sure you have good life insurance. It just bothers me. It bothers me a lot. It is sending the message that you don't need to be independent, you don't need to be self-sufficient, and as much as she might say in other snippets that it's okay to get a job, and it's fine to be independent, and it's fine if you're self-sufficient, she does heavily promote going in the opposite direction. And then she talked so much about masculinity versus femininity. And
I'm going to end this here. There's a movement, influencers going around that are hurting, in my opinion, young women, telling them things that are going to set them up for failure in the long term, the long run. Leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.